Hi, David here. You're watching Almost Ordained. Um, where did that name come from, you might ask? Well, I have two seminary degrees, but I was never ordained as a minister, which means I have a whole lot of knowledge about the Bible, and I can't preach it from the pulpit because I'm not a minister. So I'm looking for an outlet, and I'm hoping, maybe I can help educate people that, you know, I love the Bible, but I see it being misread in so many different ways that I'm hoping I can help educate people, mainly how to read it in context. That's where most of the mistakes come from. People just pull Bible verses here and there, and they don't know what the context was, so they get the meaning entirely wrong. If you want to see an example of that, I did one on Philippians 4:13. And what does that really mean in context and what that has to say about our circumstances? Um, Spoiler alert, I'll give you the punchline to it. When Paul says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, what he really means is I can adapt to any circumstances. And he had to adapt to a lot of circumstances. He might be in prison one day and in a palace the next, anywhere in between the next day, and he would adapt. We're all having to adapt right now. I mean, we've got none of us ever imagined we'd be living in the circumstances we are now. But if you believe Philippians 4:13, you can do it. You can adapt. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. So, um, I'm happy to offer that little bit of encouragement there. Um, I'm talking about Psalm 30. This is one that I have to check and be sure I'm still recording because I pulled this up. Last time I did this, it stopped recording, and I'm having to do it over again. Ugh. Okay, well, it's still recording. Unfortunately, I can't show you my screen. My attempts to do that so far have just been disastrous. But it's Psalm 30 if you want to follow in your Bible. I'm reading from the New Revised Standard Version. Starting with verses 1 to 5. A psalm, a song at the dedication of the temple of David. Now that right there is very interesting. The dedication of the temple, and it says it's a psalm of David, but David did not build the temple. He had the idea to build the temple. He wanted to, but God told him, no, you can't do it. Two different accounts. One says it's because he shed too much blood. The other is because God first had to give the nation of Israel rest from their enemies around them. And so it would fall to his son Solomon to build the temple. So his son Solomon built the temple after he died, but this is the Psalm of David for the dedication of the temple. Well, some scholars might look at that and say, this shows that it wasn't written by David. Okay, I'm open to that possibility, but it's also possible if David knew that one day his son would build the temple, that he went ahead and wrote this and told Solomon before he died, when you build the temple, I want you to read this at the dedication. But when we read the occasion for the psalm, actually, it doesn't seem to have anything to do with the temple. It's much more personal. It's about how God healed him from a deadly illness, and he's giving thanks, which, I don't see any direct connection with building the temple, but make of that what you will. Okay, now continuing, second half of verse 1. I will extol you, O Lord. For you have drawn me up and did not let my foes rejoice over me. O Lord my God, I cried to you for help, and you have healed me. O Lord, you brought up my soul from Sheol and restored my life from among those gone down to the pit. Sing praises to the Lord, O you his faithful ones, and give thanks to his holy name. For his anger is but for a moment, his favor is for a lifetime. Weeping may linger for a night, but joy comes with the morning. Okay, I had to pause for a second, but let's take a look at this again. So through verse 5 so far, he says, I cried for help and you have healed me. You brought up my soul from Sheol and restored my life among those gone down to the pit. Okay, so apparently the occasion for this psalm was that he was gravely ill to the point he thought he was going to die. He prayed for God to heal him, and God healed him and saved his life. That's the meaning in verse 3, you have brought up my soul from Sheol. If you don't know this, in modern times, especially if you grew up in the church, you probably think of the afterlife as being heaven and hell. Good people go to heaven, or the righteous, the ones that God, the true believers, go to heaven, and everyone else goes to hell. In ancient Israel, they didn't think of it that way. There was a sort of life after death, your soul, but in a disembodied existence, which was less than real, Everyone's soul went to a place called Sheol. It didn't matter if you were good or bad, righteous or unrighteous. Everyone, when they died, their soul went to Sheol, or is also called the pit. Hang on for a second. Okay, I just saw a UPS man deliver something, but apparently I don't have to sign for it, which, in these times, if I don't have to sign for something, that's one less contact and one less chance to get COVID-19. I'm good with that. Okay, so he's saying he was sick and he was dying, and God healed him and saved his life. Then verses 4 and 5, sing praises to the Lord, you his faithful ones, and give thanks to his holy name. For his anger is but for a moment, his favor is for a lifetime. Weeping may linger for the night, but joy comes with the morning. And verse 5 actually was, that's always been a verse I like to refer to when I'm going through a difficult time. It's a reminder that, unless this is something that can kill you, it will be temporary. The vast majority of hardships we endure, sicknesses, or they usually turn out to be temporary, and at the end of it, there will be an end to it. And he says in verse 4, sing praises to the Lord, you his faithful ones. Okay, this is a common feature of this would be called a psalm of thanksgiving. There are different types of psalms. One of them is thanksgiving, when God has answered a prayer and you want to give thanks to God. Not only does the psalmist give thanks to God, he urges everyone, you, his faithful ones, give thanks to his name. You, I don't see you praising God. Come on, praise God with me. It's a common feature of the Psalms, actually. And so David is just so overwhelmed with gratitude and thankfulness to God. It's not big enough for him to do alone. He wants to enlist other people to thank God with him. And now verse 6, I'll read verses 6 and 7. This is where David describes his situation before the illness. As for me, I said in my prosperity, I shall never be moved. By your favor, O Lord, you had established me as a strong mountain. You hid your face, I was dismayed. Okay, now it's interesting. Before he got sick, he talks about his prosperity and almost like a confession of sin, because he said, the Lord, gave me all this wealth and made me a strong mountain. I shall never be moved because of my money, because of my prosperity. And the Lord had to get his attention, teach him a lesson, and say, no, it's not because of your money. It's because of me. So what did God do? And David says, you hid your face. He got sick. I was dismayed. Dismayed, not only that he was sick and dying, but also that he knew God was displeased with him. And he had to learn again how to be humble. And he had to learn again to trust in God, not his money. Now, I will admit, I'm not perfect in that regard. People are facing some real financial hardship right now. And I have a bit more security, and I'm grateful for that, but at the same time, I wonder, what would I do if I really had to trust God to take care of me financially? I've never really had to do that, I've always had people around me to take care of me. And I have a number of physical ailments that make full-time work, very difficult. But in spite of that, my situation is a little more secure than a lot of people. And so I don't want to come off saying, don't worry, be happy, trust God. But you look in the Bible, that always seems to be the answer, to trust in God rather than riches. And there's, a lot of people who, even though they've lost a lot of money, still have more than enough. But they're freaking out and saying, we've got to get the economy going again. Everybody get back to work. So what if people get sick and die? We've got to get the economy going. I'm losing money here. If that's your reason for wanting to end the quarantine or shelter in place, all I have to say is shame on you. You're putting other people's lives at risk for your money when you can afford. Some people losing the money they've lost is a real hardship. They can't pay the rent. They can't buy food. They can't get medicine. Or when it reaches that point, it really is a hardship. But it seems like a lot of the push to reopening is coming from people who are not in that position. They've lost money, yes, but they are far from being in hardship. I remember, Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, I remember hearing like there was this stock market crash in 1987, 88, somewhere in the late 80s, and his net worth went from 8 billion to 5 billion. Now, he still had 5 billion, but that would be enough to freak out a lot of rich people. What he said was, it was paper when I had it, and it was paper when I lost it. You know, I can have it. See, he could have that. He didn't measure his worth or his security based on how much money he had. He knew he had more than enough. David knew he had more than enough, but he put his trust in his prosperity, thinking because of my money, I'm secure, I'm invincible, I'm invulnerable. No one can touch me because of my money. God had to get his attention. It's something, C.S. Lewis said something along the lines of, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks to us in our circumstances, I think. I forget what that was. But the next part was, and shouts to us in our pain. Pain is God's megaphone to rouse a sleeping world. We in this country, we are going in the wrong direction in some ways. And God, this may be God shouting to get our attention. If it is, we would be very foolish to ignore it. God shouted at David, and David knew what to do. Starting at verse 8. To you, O Lord, I cried, and to the Lord I made supplication. What profit is there in my death, if I go down to the pit? Will the dust praise you? Will it tell of your faithfulness? Hear, O Lord, and be gracious to me. O Lord, be my helper. See, David could, like most men of power and success, lose his humility. But when God got his attention, he knew how to humble himself before God. The way he prays is not how the word of faith tells people to pray, or a prosperity gospel, or health and wealth gospel. It's not how they tell you to pray. They tell you to pray like, just decree and declare that this virus is gone. Decree and declare that I am healed. By his stripes I am healed. Isaiah 53:5. You are the Lord who healeth me, Lord. Exodus 15:26. But David could have come to God and said, Lord, you promised through Moses that you are the Lord who heals. Now heal me. I believe it, I receive it, I claim it. But that's not what he did. He humbled himself. He said, hear me, O Lord, be gracious to me. Be my helper, because I have no one else to help me. And verse 9 is interesting, how he negotiates. I always find it odd to try to negotiate with, the creator of all the universe. Like, what do you have to offer? But he says, if I go down to the pit, if I die, how will I praise you? I can't praise you from the grave. Will the dust praise you? Will it tell of your faithfulness? I can't praise you. I can't tell of your faithfulness if I'm dead, so please. And I promise I will tell of your faithfulness if you heal me. Think of that what you want to, but who knows? Maybe God does get some pleasure out of us praising him. And telling of his faithfulness, God doesn't really need us to do that, but doesn't need to hear us telling him he's faithful, but we do. People around us need to hear it. If God has been faithful to you in some way, it's good to tell them, good to tell others, and certainly good to thank God for it. Okay, now picking up from verse 11. We're getting back to praising and thanking God for delivering him from death. You have turned my mourning into dancing. You have taken off my sackcloth and clothed me with joy, so that my soul may praise you and not be silent. O Lord my God, I will give thanks to you forever. So before he was saying, if I die, I can't give thanks to you, I can't praise you. Now you have saved me, and I will praise you. I will not be silent. I will tell of your faithfulness, just like I promised. I will give thanks to you forever. Okay. Well, why am I tearing up right now? This didn't happen to me, or this was David's psalm, not mine. But I guess maybe if you've walked with God for a while, you can think of ways that he's been faithful to you. And maybe, and God, I know there are people out there too who are sick and worried that they might die because of COVID-19. And which is why I'm still going to practice everything that they say as much as I can. I've got gloves. Here, let me show you this. I have gloves. I found these today in a hardware store. I would have never thought to look for latex gloves in a hardware store, but there they were. I've been thinking for so long is like, how I don't have gloves. Where can I find gloves? And sometimes it just takes a little persistence. And, score right here. Hand sanitizer. I haven't seen this on the shelves in weeks. But there it was. Oh, gosh. And I was praying, Lord, we need some. We're kind of running low on those hand wipes that we had, and we need some more hand sanitizer. My bottle's getting low. The wipes are getting low. And there it was. Give us this day our daily bread. God will give you what you need if you ask. Not necessarily everything you want, but what you need. We need. So there's my little praise to God for his faithfulness. And he says, the imagery in verse 11 is, he says, you have taken off my sackcloth. In ancient Israel, I don't know, in case you don't know this, sackcloth was a very uncomfortable garment made with, it was like burlap. If you can imagine dressing yourself in burlap, how uncomfortable and itchy that would be. People in ancient Israel did this on purpose. It was usually a sign of mourning, someone close to them has died, or a sign of great distress, and trying to humble yourself before God and begging God for forgiveness and mercy. You would put on sackcloth for that. So David did that. And God, in response, clothed him with joy. Verse 11. Yeah, an answer to prayer like that, I'd be pretty joyful too. And listen, if you prayed for someone you loved and they died, don't think that this verse is blaming you for that, or that, sometimes things happen, and you can't pray it away, you can't obey it away, you can't believe it away, you can't faith it away. It just, you have to go through it. And, at some point, we're all going to die of something, but I don't want any of you to die needlessly from this pandemic. And so I'm doing my part to try to keep myself from catching it and becoming a carrier myself. And I urge everyone watching this, everyone who's not watching it, everyone, period, just do what you know you need to do. If you're going out, wear masks, wear gloves, social distance, stay 6 feet apart from people, sanitize your hands, the surfaces of things you brought in. I sanitized that hand spray sanitizer and the box of gloves I showed you. I sanitized that before bringing it in the house. And I'm doing that with just about everything before it comes in. Unless I can leave it out for, I've seen reports that say, like, on a soft surface like cardboard or clothing, it can live for 24 hours. So if I can leave it outside for 24 hours, I'll do that to save on sanitizer. Harder surfaces, especially metal. This plastic surface, it can last a little longer, maybe up to 72 hours is what I've seen. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a doctor. Okay, but that's just what I've seen in reports I've looked at, that it can live up to 72 hours on hard surfaces. So I went ahead and sanitized those surfaces because, I don't know if I can leave it out for 3 days. But please, everyone, do what you can not to contract this virus and not to put added burden on our health system that's already overtaxed and stressed to the breaking point, and the healthcare workers who have been just heroic beyond measure. Don't add to their burden. They're already dealing with, more than they should, more than they should have to, but, don't add to their burden by becoming sick yourself. And then passing it on, because we know now this virus can pass even when you're not showing symptoms. You may look and feel perfectly healthy, and you still might, if you picked it up somewhere, you can still pass it along even before you show symptoms. Okay. So, if God has been gracious to you, here's this, especially, if you had coronavirus and you recovered from it, Psalm 30 is perfect for giving thanks to God. And if you have it, I pray God will have mercy and heal you. I'm sorry. I've experienced a little more anxiety this week from all these states opening up that don't appear to be ready for it yet, but they're opening up because they say we got to get the economy going. You want to get the economy going, everybody do what they have to stop this virus from spreading. That's the only way the economy is going to come back. And, well, not to mention you'll save many lives by doing that. Okay. That's all I have right now. I'll say goodbye. God bless you. Stay safe. And remember these words from Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. In everything, do to others as you would have them do to you. For this is the law and the prophets.